Jam. Entertainment.
Numerous things, one of which you obviously need to go back to page 242 of Set the Record Straight, which speaks about yellow fringe flags and what it represents. I'm not going to give the answer here because for those that have it, those that have the book, all they have to do is go to that page and read up on it. Next thing, Nuwaubians don't know the law, point blank. They don't. They're not, for some reason, not interested, don't want to know, might be fearful of realizing or the reality that they're contracting with the devil through the social security numbers, driver's license, birth certificates, and it's all about commerce and contract law. So what Nuwaubians need to realize is that they have to start studying the law, which is what it says in the guidebook for Nuwaubians, what it says in Holy Tabernacle Family Guidebook. Know who the sheriff is, who the attorneys are, who the judges are, know who the district court attorneys are, the district courts, know where all those things are and how you interrelate, because if you don't, they're going to take liberties with your liberties, pun intended, because of the fact that you haven't stood up to defend your rights. So that's one of the big things. The next thing, I'm somewhat amazed that how much faith Nuwaubians have put in the legal system is interesting, considering in Set the Record Straight, or particularly in the UNNM Constitution, where it clearly states, page 21, page 27, that if you hire an attorney, you automatically put yourself under their jurisdiction. So that's another one of the amazing things as to why Nuwaubians would allow an attorney who has an oath to the bar, who is a public officer, whose oath is to uphold the court. He's an officer of the court. His allegiance is to the British Accredited Registry, which goes through London, which is a private city like the Vatican under the Knights Templar. For those on the square and the compass, they'll understand what I'm talking about. Nuwaubians really need to realize that it's all about contract. There's all admiralty law out here. So if you don't have a contract, if you don't understand admiralty law, your local statutes, codes, state law, you are consenting to be under their jurisdiction. So that's what Nuwaubians need to do. And in freeing Abba Isa, he had already stated on June 30th, 2003, when he told the judge that he was indigenous, he was sovereign, he challenged jurisdiction of the court. We, on our end, as family, we have to realize that in order for us to free him, what we have to do is one thing to state that he's indigenous and he's sovereign, but he cannot be released to people that are not indigenous and are not sovereign. So to emphasize his sovereignty without emphasizing your own at the same time, then there's no way that you could possibly judge him, because he stated he can only be judged by a jury of his peers. As it says in Matthew chapter 6 verse 24, no man can serve two masters. I was in the court, and I was up in there on back in August, and I was surprised that when the appellate judges walked in, everyone in the audience, in the gallery, stood up. And it was interesting when people state that Abba Isa, Malachi Z. York El, Atum Ray is their master. Why would they acknowledge Caucasians, Tammuz, settlers, Confederates in their jurisdiction? By standing up, they have consented to giving jurisdiction and control of the case over to the judges. I was in there and I did not stand up. I sat down because I know who is real and who is unreal. Judges are all corporate fictions. Does it make a difference whether they're Judge Judy, Judge Mathis? They're all sitting on a bench operating in admiralty law in a de facto, meaning not in fact, status. So the whole thing is what they call a dog and a pony show. That's what it is. The attorneys, with all due respect, Adrian Patrick might be doing certain things, but me personally, he's got an oath to the bar. So he doesn't have an oath to uphold Dr. Malachi Ziyar's rights. He doesn't have an oath to uphold the rights of Nuwaubians. He doesn't have the right. He doesn't have an oath to uphold the rights of Yamasee, Native American Moors. He doesn't have any of that. So he, as an officer of the court, is bound to live up and agree and go through with his contract. So those are one of the main reasons Nuwaubians are not studying the law. They are not applying the law, and they are not using the law. If you look on page 2, top paragraph, will set the record straight. The answers are there. We, on a whole, have to start using them. Not to state that, well, Abba Isa alone is indigenous and sovereign. Well, if he's indigenous and sovereign, he's got to have a nation of people that are backing him. And if he doesn't have that, then he's just one man, and he won't be recognized internationally.
Well, first of all, because they know who I am. They know I'm the chief of Native American law. They know that the whole state of Georgia belongs to my tribe and has since 1715, the Yamasee War. They never expected us to ever stand up again and claim our indigenous status. When I stood up and claimed my indigenous status, the first chance I could really do it was in the small courts of Putnam County by using the word secure party, just to keep the court off balance until I got to the federal court, where on June 30th I made it very clear who I am. I made a declaration of my indigenous status for me and my tribe, our number 208, and they knew that if this jurisdiction goes through, they have no authority over a large group of people that they were calling a Nuwaubian religious cult, which was really a Native American tribe, and only the Nuwaubian part of it was the Masonic Lodge. And they were bending the words, twisting the things to the public, to the media, because so they don't.
Well, that's an interesting question. You got to take everything back to its beginning. Ab initio is the legal term. In the beginning, there were those of us that were over here on this landmass known as North America, South America, and what happened was we were watching Christopher Columbus get off the boat, particularly in Barbados, because that's where they first stopped off. And we were standing there watching them get off the boat. So in that regard, we are indigenous. The confession by them calling us African American is a confession on their part, realizing that everyone on the planet comes from Africa through the mitochondria DNA. So therefore, they know that we are indigenous, and we are not restricted anywhere we go on the planet, which we know as Zurukaya, Atmam, Amexim, Turtle Island, Land of the Frogs. So when they came, the European settlers, Tammuz, Confederates, came here. They came here under a charter from England, and incidentally, England, Ireland, Scotland, France, Spain was set up by us as the Moors. So there were those of us who were Moors who were already over here prior to Columbus, De Gama, Hernando Cortez, and all of them. We were already here. So in relation to the land in the area in Putnam, that is one just small percentage of the whole landmass. The whole landmass is actually ours. We were here first because Georgia specifically had a charter from King George III, and a charter is like permission granted from a sovereign for an exploring party to go someplace and set up shop in their name, and they automatically, by putting the flag, lay claim and title to everything. All of the treaties that the English, Spanish have established with the native peoples here. Native American is a misnomer, because American was a title that was attributed to those of us purebloods, dark skin, curly hair here first, and then it was used in a derogatory sense as an American. Then they ended up taking it, like they take everything else, by theft. So when you look at all those treaties with the Creeks, the Seminole, the Washita, the Yamasee, as Yamasee, we never signed any treaties with them. But when you look at all the other different Native American groups, all the treaties, anyone who knows contract law knows you have to have 2 signatures on a contract. If you don't have 2 signatures on a contract, the contract is fraudulent. All you have to do is go on the internet and go to the Yale, Harvard site and look on any of the Native American treaties, and you'll clearly see there, you'll see the Native Americans, they signed their name X. All of them signed their name X. X equals unknown, or it equals 10 in Roman numerals. So therefore, when they signed X, what happened was the English had representatives who were witnesses, but there was no secondary party. So therefore, the land really never exchanged hands. So therefore, for the state of New York, the state of Georgia, the United States, which are all corporate fictions, due to the Legislative Act of 1871, they have stolen the land because there's no valid contract. They would have to show how they had a contract, because we as native peoples, we had a name, and when you look on some of those contracts, they translated the names in English. That there was no translation in their language. You won't see one. So it's a unilateral contract which justifies them stealing the land. So that was theft. So in regards to the situation with the land down in Eatonton, Georgia, that is under a corporation or artificial venue. It's not dealing with the flesh and blood side of it. In law, there's two sides. There's a corporate side, and there's what they call, or is known as, a common law side. All court cases are dealing in corporations, which are dealing in fictions. Look at your name. If it's in all capital letters, what that signifies is this is a corporation. Due to the fact under the Legislative Act of 1871, the United States only exists in D.C., Guam, Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, Samoa, and its jurisdiction is the 10-mile squared area in D.C., known as, because it's a district of Columbia, it's not a state. So what we have here is a situation of a corporation coming in to a natural venue, flesh and blood venue, and stealing the land, and because people acquiesce or agree to it, then they become bound by the contract.
Okay. But they knew I wasn't going to take a plea, so they had to torture me into taking a plea.
Now, in that torture, you were, what was the experience that you learned of the other co-defendants?
I was told that they were being treated the same way I'm treated. That means I was sleeping on a concrete floor with real poor, bad food, wasn't getting my medication, watching rats and roach bugs and stuff, in the midst of very dangerous criminals, burglary, fights breaking out, people getting stabbed, suicides. I watched 4 or 5 people commit suicide. I was part of the middle of a riot up in Atlanta, and some Italian guy from the mafia supposed to hung himself.
No, because the documents that he signed when he fired the attorneys, he reserved his rights under UCC 1-207, all rights reserved. When he was in court, he clearly stated to the judge that he was indigenous, he was sovereign. He was supposed to be released into the hands of the Yamasee Native American Wars, and the UN number is 215, 1993. When he further on in that same case, he clearly stated he was speaking to the judge through the attorney, and what happened was the judge realized if the attorney had tendered his statement of indigenousness, that would have seized the hearing right then and there, and they would have had to deal with the fact of his indigenousness. However, what's ironic is that Frank Rubino did a brief outlining Malachi Z. whole lineage and his genealogy. But unfortunately, Rubino is an esquire, and an esquire falls under an agent title under England, which goes against the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. The 13th Amendment deals with titles of nobility. As Moors, we know about the 13th Amendment with 20 sections, which can be found in the UNNM Constitution, which we are supposed to be using from the first statute to the last, which is what Malachi Z. said in court, which is why he said he had to keep it on the record of our Constitution as an indigenous peoples. The UCC is a uniform commercial code which deals in commerce and corporations. Everything is contract. That is unavoidable, that is inescapable, and that can be easily proven to Nuwaubians out there by the driver's licenses, the social security numbers, the birth certificates. Everything is operating in commerce on this planet. So what commerce does and corporations do is you create or you get incorporated for what? To protect yourself from liability. That's the purpose of incorporating. A lot of sisters don't realize that they have sold their children to the state, so the state by default has jurisdiction if the children agree and say that is their name on a birth certificate or social security number. So Uniform Commercial Code has to deal with commerce, and everything, they're unifying all the laws together, so it doesn't matter whether you go from one country to the next. the laws will be uniform and there won't be a clash in terms of jurisdiction, in terms of procedure, that everything will be uniform. Well, the purpose of the Uniform Commercial Code is in contracts, and it's in commerce side. However, in our Constitution, we cannot be held for violating any political codes of any nation, which includes the UCC. So there are aspects of the UCC that we can use in a commercial setting, and then there are other aspects that simply don't apply to us. Going back to the original question that was asked in this interview, due to the fact that we were already here standing on the land watching another Moor, because it was a Moor, Pietro del Negro, who stepped off the boat first and greeted another Moor who was on the land shore. So we are outside of all of their corporate jurisdictions, all of their corporate codes, their statutes, all of that, due to the fact that we were here first, on the land first. And by them calling us African American, just for the sake of this conversation, they acknowledged who was here first. Go back and check all the old UNNM newspapers that were put out, We the People, Yamasee Native American Moors of the Creek Nation. Go check those out. Check out We the People. Check out Set the Record Straight. Check out all of those old newspapers and read them. All you have to do, I'll do it the simplest way that was explained in one of the newspapers. Simply write a letter to your quote-unquote respective government informing them of who you are, because incidentally, as a side note, we are in the second decade of Indigenous people, so the UN has given Indigenous peoples another 10 years. And one of the criteria, which is in C-169, which is what's known as the Indigenous and Tribal Peoples Convention, which is in the UNNM Constitution, it clearly states that self-identification as Indigenous is a fundamental criteria for the conventions that apply. So simply write a letter to the government and let them know who and what you are. I would not suggest you use your slave name. You cannot be Indigenous if you have the name Watson, Smith, Johnson, Clark. All of those go back to where? They go right back to England. And if you check on page 98 and 99 of the UNNM Constitution, it states how our true names have been taken from us. As the Bible says, a good name is better than gold. So therefore, in order to get out of that slave mentality, first thing you have to do is drop the slave name. Now, you can utilize the slave name in commerce because they have us under what's called the law of necessity. You gotta work, you've got to eat, you've got to, pay your rent, those type of things. So what one needs to do is realize you want to separate what they have turned you into from what you truly are, the flesh and blood. So you always want to be the creditor, never the debtor. What I think is important for us at this point in time, being that the appeals court has denied Maku's appeal, again, I'll go back to the same thing, and it's real simple. We have to start studying the law. We have to start using the law. We have to pull ourselves out of this system. Their system is set up fictitiously. Look at this. We're here on Frederick Douglass in 125th Street. You look at Frederick Douglass Boulevard, that's all spelled in all capital letters. This camera that I'm being filmed on is called the Leica Dosimar. The letters are all capitals. When you see all capitals, that denotes it's a fiction. None of this is real. But what you have to do is you have to separate yourself from that. And as chief of the Hata clan of Yamasee Native American Moors, we have a process that we are utilizing for those family members that feel that they want to make that step to separate themselves out of the system. Because things are happening at such a fast pace right now. Your contract, meaning your driver's license, your car is a tag. What do you tag? You tag property. So you think you own your car? The car don't belong to you, it belongs to the state. Everything you have is on lease. So I would strongly suggest that our people study the law. I would strongly suggest that they start using the law. Use it, study it, implement it as it says on page 2 of Set the Record Straight. Realize this is all fiction, that anything that has your name in all capital letters is not you, it's a corporation. They have jurisdiction over corporations. They don't have jurisdiction over flesh and blood, because they don't write bears a ticket. They don't write deers a ticket for jaywalking. They can't, because they'll say they're under natural law. So if we say we are the children of Anu, the children of the Anunnaki, the children of the Naturu, the Shishuki, the Omari, all of that, then it's about time we have to start standing up. We know Nibiru's coming, so you have to get off those chains. However, the choice is yours. It's a free will universe. So if you choose not and choose and feel that you want to wait on an individual, that's your prerogative. The only thing that I will do right now, and a lot of people that are on this level do, is we just present the truth for those who want to accept it. Only a fool ducks when the truth is thrown at them. What we need to do to get Malachi York out of prison right now, the nation of individuals, the nation of indigenous sovereigns have to come forth. That's what we have to do right now. Because by stating that, again, that to say that he's indigenous and you're not, he's a free man, and you would be in a slave capacity. A slave cannot free a free man. A slave cannot do anything for a free man, because a slave has a master that he or she has to answer to. So the first step is Nuwaubians on a whole, because Nuwaubian means more. For those that may want to get to an argument or debate about that, that's in the Nuwaubian language guide. So that's what that is. But that's what we on a whole have to do. And again, some people may feel apprehensive about it because of what it requires, but God has the ability to respond, and God is responsible. So if we say we want to take on the responsibility, then it's required for us. The first thing you have to say is, I'm God, I am responsible, and I'm going to take responsibility. First thing is, you have to free yourself mentally. No one can do it for you. And if you choose not to do it or wait on somebody, again, that's your prerogative. And then, so as far as that.
Okay,
yes.
Malachi declared himself a party. Why didn't he just walk out?
I don't know, because I wasn't. I don't have any of that information at that point in time in the case. Right? But by declaring himself a secure party, there were other things that should have been done in the courtroom, and we also got to realize what we're dealing with. We're dealing with principalities in high places. So by saying, well, why didn't he just, he said he's a secure party, he should have been able to walk out like that. It's a lot more entailed than that, and there's a lot of other things involved. It isn't that simple. And if he were to come out just to entertain your question, let's say he was to come out tomorrow, and he said he's supposed to be judged and tried by a jury of his peers. How many out there in the Nuwaubian nation are sovereign? How many are indigenous? How many have stated that? How many have actually sent letters to this corporate government to say that they're indigenous, they're sovereign, and they're outside the general venue and jurisdiction? None of them, well, I don't know too many. So the ones who are really pushing for action race release, they have to make sure that they have done the steps necessary to say that we are going, as a whole, are going to come forth for him. But if you haven't done the steps or taken the steps to free yourself, how are you going to free somebody when you're still on the chains? You can't.
Hello?
Yes.
Yes, is this Mr. Malachi Z. York?
This is Maku, Chief Black Thunderbird Eagle, Chief of Yamasee Native American Moors of the Creek Nation, BIA registry number 208/1999. That is when we registered with the Bureau of Indian Affairs. Our Constitution of Declaration of Indigenous Status has already been in existence since 1992. Yes, but they referred to me sometime as Malachi, and even to insult me, Dwight.
No, there's no expiration date on individuals becoming sovereign, but another thing with that, and I'm glad you asked, that's a good question. when you say that you're sovereign, there's responsibility that comes with that. The nigger attitude got to go. The nigger mannerisms have to go. The nigger walk, talk, all of that stops. You have to start acting noble, being noble, thinking noble, walking noble. And if you go in the Holy Tablets, chapter 10, tablet 12, verses 309 to 476, if you've read that tablet and the same old mannerisms are still there, I'm going to leave the answer because it's in there. And I'll leave it at that. But everything changes, and you have to take responsibility for the agreeable and disagreeable that happens in your life. That's in the mind book, and the mind book says that.
What is a Nuwaupian?
I'm not going to ever define that word to anybody. You know why? Because that's the question I'm putting before them. You keep referring to us as Nuwaupians. My question to them is, what is a Nuwaupian? And if you say a follower of Malachi's yoke, that's not it. That's not a definition. What is a Nuwaupian? Because if you call a Christian a follower of Christ, it's because his name is Christ. So you can't call Nuwaupians followers of Malachi, but they would be called Malachiites, not Nuwaupians. So now I'm not going to tell you all what Nuwaupians, because one day I want to use that in court to say you've been identifying us as a cult, a semi-religious cult, or fanatical cult, and using the word Nuwaupian, don't know whether you're spelling with a B or a P, don't know what language it comes from, and don't know what it really means. You follow? Meanwhile, you keep throwing it in the public just to avoid using Yamasee Native American Moors of the Creek Nation to identify that we are Native Americans, Indigenous, the true people of this land. We call this land Moo Land before you got here, or we call it Turtle Island before the European tribes came here and infected it with their disease, or with their disease of hate and racism and war and drugs and pornography and all the things that they use against us that they brought here and established.
Particularly for family that's overseas in other areas like that, it's simple in terms of where the mind is, the body goes. And one thing we have to realize: who calls us black? The Tamhu does. Who calls us African? The Tamhu does. But if we ask the indigenous people of those areas what they call themselves, it changes. The terminology changes. So we have to drop all these terms and how we should identify ourselves. That's why we have to let go. We're the ones who made them. We're the ones who've been walking this earth millions of years before they were even a thought in existence to be in existence. Pun intended. So why is it so difficult? Because yes, there's a lot of risk in this. It's risk. This is not for the faint of heart. If you're scared of indigenousness and scared of being sovereign, don't come, don't call, don't email, stay where you are. This is not for those who are of fear. And if you want, I'll put it in an analogy that I think people can relate to very well. The Matrix movies. That's what it is right now. We're in the Matrix. So for those who want their sovereignty, and if you're afraid, to risk it, Atum Ray is taking a risk in jail. So that's for all of us. So we said we want to help. We got to start taking risks. We got to start working together. We got to start learning to contract with each other. And we're going to also have to learn how to discipline ourselves. And all of that comes with sovereignty. But again, not everybody's ready for that. One of the things, particularly with the case, for those who don't know what the word attorney means, attorney is someone who takes your rights, your property, and transfers it over to another sovereign. That's what the legal definition of an attorney is. If you say, or if you're being called a client is an invalid, somebody who's a ward of the state, somebody who's mentally deranged, their mental faculties are not in order. That is what the legal definition of client is. What they are using out here are legal terms, so you have to get yourself a Black's Law dictionary. The older the better. The next thing you have to get is an Oxford dictionary or Webster's dictionary. When you start going back and forth into the words that they use, the language being used is legalese, which is what? The Black's Law dictionary. But they come at you thinking English, so you're thinking he's calling you a client, that's a good thing. A judge is a person operating in admiralty. All judges are paid under the port authorities. All judges are committing constructive treason by sitting on the bench because of the fact there are yellow fringes in the courtroom, and a yellow French flag signifies that the Constitution has been suspended. And with your Constitution being suspended, you cannot talk about civil rights, you cannot talk about constitutional rights. So again, this is one of the things that a lot of family is not really educated upon, and there's certain people who should be teaching them or at least informing them. But it's a lot deeper than that, and the conspiracy against Malachi Ziokel is a lot deeper than that as well. So there's a lot of parties that are involved that want to keep him locked up, that are with us, saying they want to try and get the master out, and they're not trying to get him out. They're doing everything they can to keep him locked up. They should be doing more things by calling out the system for what it is. Fraud. There's no statute of limitations on fraud.
So as an indigenous person, you are claiming your indigenous status.
My indigenous status is Native American. That's what I'm claiming it.
Hold on, lady.
All right, well, to know I'm a Native American. Yamasee. I'm the chief of Yamasee Native American Moors of Creek Nation. Our land stems from Alabama to the tips of North Carolina, all the way down to the tips of Florida, straight on across the savannah. That is our land. All the Europeans, or they're not Europeans, they're Euro-Americans who are here need to go back home where they belong, because all they brought with them was a lot of trouble.
There's an international convention out of the UN on the rights of indigenous people in terms of migration. So being that we're indigenous, we're not restricted in anywhere we want to go. We can travel anywhere on the planet because we were the first here. So how can we be restricted? Bears go where they want to go. Fish where they want to fish. And everybody acknowledges, they say, well, they're under natural law. So now the question that has to be asked is, if a bear is under natural law, and according to the Bible, man was given dominion over the fish in the sea, the fowl of the air, and every creeping thing that creepeth upon the planet, why is it that man at this point in time needs permission from another man to go someplace? Because man has abdicated his responsibility as God. And if you look in Psalms 82:6, it says, ye shall die like men because you refuse to face the fact of who you are. So the travel and the ability to move about on the planet, again, that's all done corporately. When you get a passport, that means you are dead. You are a cadaver. Only dead people need passports. So therefore that protects the country that you left from liability unless you are a diplomat. If you're not a diplomat or a government official, they'll come to bat for you. If you're not a diplomat or a government official, they're not going to come to bat for you. If you are, you get what's called, the word is, escapes me right now. You get immunity. But you see, being that we're indigenous, we're outside of that because they've set their whole system on the land. The word that's also bandied about is called an autochthon. An autochthon means from the soil. And since the Bible said God created man from the dust of the earth, and man was made a living soul, man came from where? The dust of the ground. So wherever the dust is, we are part of the dust. I am one with all, and all is one with me. So therefore, how can another man violate universal law by restricting my movement to go to another place, whether it be out of adventure, whether it be out of recreation, or whether it be out of persecution? But as long as we continue to agree that the judge is a judge, and there are no judges, actually, in the geographical United States of America, there are no judges. There's no Article 3 judges. The only ones are in D.C. because that's where the seat of power is and that's where their jurisdiction is. Outside of D.C., every judge is a fraud. Every judge, they are not judges. None of them are judges. I also forgot to mention Hawaii took their country back, and so did Alaska. So Hawaii is no longer part of the United States of America, and neither is Alaska. The indigenous people there have took the country back because they realize the fraud that's going on. You cannot write letters to congressmen or senators or people along that nature because their oath as public officials is to hold up the fraud. The United States has been bankrupt since 1933 under the Legislative Act of 1871, of which it was created in 1933 was when the bankruptcy was in effect. So the fact of the matter here is everything is operating in commerce, and the judges that sit on the benches, the judges, the prosecutors, as well as the public defenders, they all work together. The prosecutors and the public defenders play both prosecutor and defendant. For example, a prosecutor on one side is also the public defender. The defendant on the other side is also the prosecutor. So it's all a hidden triangle that is operating and going on. So you have to know your rights. You have to know that these judges are operating a fraud. You have to know that the fringe flag, which is in a courtroom, is signifying the contract. And since you don't question that flag, you in admiralty law are deemed in you consent by assent, or you acquiesce and agree to it. So what our people need to understand is admiral law, constitutional law, contract law, commercial law, lex mercatoria, all those tie in together as to what happens in a courtroom. And that's why it's so important. Nuwaupuans are not studying the law, and they need to start studying it and start using it. Because if you're afraid to stand up for your rights, don't expect the pimps, hoes, and the prostitutes. And I'm talking about the county clerk, the judge, I'm talking about the people who work in the filing offices. They're all public servants. They're all corporations. So if man wants to fall under his creation, then he violates universal law, and by default he's automatically in slavery because he violated universal law by not taking up and being in his godship, so to speak.
I believe the judge working with him, all that they cost us here so they can close the court down, but they don't want the public to hear this trial. They don't want the public to see this trial. And if I thought I was such a evil man, why would I want my trial public? You know what? Shouldn't I be trying to hide this? As bogus as that sounds, with all that stuff they're saying, all that lust and all that sex and all that racketeering, would I want to have an open trial? Wouldn't I be saying, great, I'm glad they're having a private trial? Right. In fact, I'm saying, give me an open trial. I want the world to watch this trial. Tells you right there that I want the public to see it. And the fact that they don't, it tells you right there they have something they're trying to hide from y'all.
Right.
So already in a state of emergency, all you have to do is go to the Department of Labor or Public Library and you see a yellow French flag. You're under Emergency War Powers Act. Americans are enemies of the U.S. The U.S. is a corporation. The U.S. of A, small s and capital A, is the organic republic with the union of the sovereign states. So doing away with the Constitution, that's been done since 1933. All you have to do is walk into any public building and see the yellow fringes around it. They're telling you, they're advertising you to you. They're not hiding it. They're putting it in front of your face because that's where you hide stuff from human beings, because they won't see it. Citation for a speeding ticket. You go to municipal court or traffic court, you're going to see a yellow French flag in there because all the cities in the municipalities are part of the corporation overlay. They're connected to the corporate United States. So that's why if you talk about, well, I have a constitutional right, the judge is going to say if you make another outburst like that, you're going to be held in contempt of court. Why? Because you're not in the United States of America anymore. Where are you? You're in Puerto Rico. You're in a racketeering court. That's why it's called the Puerto Rico racketeering. You don't have a contract with the judge, so he can do anything to you he wants. Hence, you should be knowing about the Treaty of 1786 and 1836 between the U.S. of A. and Morocco. But if you don't utilize that treaty when you go into court, you're going into a foreign country and are invading them. So therefore, since you don't have a contract, they can lock you up. Another point I'd like to make, bringing up the Constitution, African Americans here have never been American citizens. They can't be American citizens. Why? Because the Dred Scott decision of 1857, which is in Set the Record Straight, clearly states the dissenting, the Justice Taney clearly stated that the Constitution, when it was written, dealt with whom? Dealt with free persons, dealt with those that were bound to servitude for a period of time, and 3/5 of other persons. Black, quote-unquote, black men were known as being 3/5 of what? A man. So therefore, being you were 3/5 of a man, you're not a man, so you're not entitled to anything out of that Constitution, so you can't use it to defend yourself in court. Black people can be considered, or African Americans can be considered, U.S. citizens, because U.S. citizen is a plantation created under the 14th Amendment. That's why in 2007, they're fighting for the black vote. Why? Because they say it's up for consideration. So if they want, they can pull it back from black people, and they can. Why? Because it is a privilege, not a right. The only way any Melanonite can use that Constitution in a, quote, court or in a racketeering court to defend themselves is they have to be either a Moor or a Native American, as it states in the first article. Other than that, you can't use the Constitution to defend yourself in court. I would say to them, this is the reason why, A, we have to set up our own economic system and our own standard. B, we have to set up and realize that there are those of us that you have to learn the law. There's no way you can rule and be ignorant of the law. You can't say you want to be free, but then you don't want to do what it takes to stay free. It doesn't work that way. We have to have individuals teach others of us the law, learn how to contract with each other and do business with each other. That's something on a whole we're not too cognizant of. We know it's there, but we have to do a better job of it. You can go to Chinatown. You can go to Jewtown. You can go to any other Greek town. But when it comes to us, we always seem to have a problem. People can come from Japan and China and set businesses up here overnight. There are those Nubians who have lived here for years, hundreds of years, and they can't get a bank loan just to open up a little mom and pop shop. So that shows we've got to change and create, yes, and we got to start from scratch. Yes, it's going to be hard. Yes, it's going to be trying, and it's going to take a lot of energy. What choice have you got? Because those who've been around and read books for years, they've got the underground bases ready to go. You go down there, or you get, if they cause any sort of emergency, what they're going to do is the first thing, like for example, look, we'll use New York as an example. If they cut the tunnels off, it's going to be escape from New York for real. How are you going to get out? Swim. But you don't know what's in the water, so you might be able to swim over, but what's in the water? You might get sick. You might, contagious. So these are things that have to be looked at. So it's a lot more than just saying you're sovereign. Everything has to come with it, the whole enchilada. You got to work at it. You got to get with like-minded people who have grown out of that niggeritis. And you got to go back to page 7 of Land from Planet Rift. Some people's genes have hit the wall. That's as far as they can go. Some people still believe that the dollar bill, the greenback, is worth something. And Bill Gates just said the other day he's investing in the euro. So Bill Gates is investing in the euro, and they've already said that America will become a third world country. That's a warning sign that people need to get off of the greenback and stop looking at the money as real, because it's not real. The Treasury Department on their own website say the paper is worth nothing except for what it will buy. A lot of people don't even know. Nobody should be paying for anything. Everything's already prepaid through the Treasury. But since people don't know and don't question and don't write, and Nuwaubians have stopped questioning. They don't question anymore. They believe anything anyone tells them. They don't question the legal system. They're not questioning those put in charge. They're not questioning. They're not finding out the answers. A wise man said, don't believe me, check it out. So I'll say the same thing. Anything that's been said on this CD, don't believe none of it. Go find out for yourself. Go check it out for yourself. Believe nothing, because the word believe is to be, lie, even, to ignore the facts. So the same crew, the same KKK, the same coven. We got it again. Let's take it back to the basics. If they open the state case, it's the state of Georgia. The state of Georgia is a condition of what? Existence. It should be the Georgia Republic, which would bring you back to the Constitution. But the state of Georgia itself is a fiction. The state of Georgia, in their own codes, in OCGA 1-2-1 and 1-2-2, says there's 2 classes of persons, natural and artificial. And it says artificial persons are corporations that can be created or destroyed at the will of their maker. So by having a driver's license, social security number, car, leasing a house, paying tax, you're acknowledging you have a corporate, artificial, fake existence. So in order to use the nine mind must realize we will utilize the six mind to create the nine society. But you cannot create the nine society if you're still operating on the six, because we know six is death, destruction, six is an imperfect number, triple six is the mark of the man. Amen. Behemoth. We're not the behemoth. We are the gods. However, if you want them to rule over you, that's your decision. That's your choice. Oh, this is the clan flag for the Autochthons clan of Yamasee Native American Moors, and this is a flag that we wear around which identifies us. When you're in admiralty law, one of the laws is called the law of the flag. You have to identify your vessel. So usually most people will keep their ID in their wallet. When they keep their ID in their wallet and they get pulled over by a peace officer or a public officer, they will say, let me see your ID. And you show the ID which shows that you're a debtor. Because any of the Tamil stuff that you have, you're a debtor, which equals a slave. So by me wearing the flag around, oh, I also have, this is the clan flag, this is my flag for me, and then this is me at the United Nations, because I had to go, you have to get registered at the UN. So we're recognized by the UN as an indigenous clan, as the Autochthons clan. So if you don't have your flag on you, you can be pirated. Think of it in admiralty, because in admiralty law, you are considered guilty first and have to prove your innocence. So by me wearing the flag, I'm saying I'm not operating under any corporate venue or jurisdiction. So if we bump, I've already outlined that I'm indigenous, so I'm outside your venue. And if you proceed to write any commercial instruments to create commerce, then we will deal with it from that standpoint. But I identify myself right off the top, because that's in a United States code, whereby if you don't have a flag, you're identified, it's known as the international law of the flag. So most people walking down the street will be considered a debtor by default. By me wearing this, I'm showing I'm not a debtor, I'm showing that I'm indigenous, I'm showing I'm flesh and blood, I'm showing I'm real, I'm not a cadaver. What's interesting is you won't find in the international arena, they don't recognize the word African, they recognize the names of the countries. So Africa, and we know where it comes from, the Arabic faraka, which means to separate, which is what they did, is really the Sudan. So again, what we found when we went to the UN was the same game as being played on the indigenous people. They think they're standing in front of a flesh and blood person saying we don't have clean water, we don't have food, our land is being stolen from us, and what has ended up happening is the fact that they don't realize it is a commerce game, it's about corporations. Because if you look on any document, they'll take the name, even at the UN, at the indigenous forum, they took the names of the indigenous people and put it in all capital letters. According to the United States Federal Styles Manual, which is linked with other governments, all corporations are, all the governments are all predicated on fraud, they're all corporations and they're all interfaced with each other. When you see that Federal Styles Manual, it clearly states corporations have all capital letters. They are not real nouns. Real people have a first name, the first letter is capitalized, the rest is lowercase. So anytime you see something all capitals, it means something else. Because they have to charge you, meaning they charge your corporation name. Because they know you have unlimited liability, as well as unlimited credit. But they have to have limited liability due to the fact that the United States is bankrupt. So they don't want people to know that all these debts are supposed to be discharged. Nobody's supposed to be paying for anything. It's all backed by the birth certificates, which is what is sold internationally in commerce. So unfortunately, a lot of our African brothers and sisters, some don't know. Of course, you know, there's an elite few that do know, but they're part of the conspiracy to keep the planet a prison planet.
basically, with everything that's been said and done, they basically wanted to go forward with this plea to hurry up the case. So they tortured you.
Right.
And then once you
me into pleading. I'm sorry.
And once you basically realized the plot and the ploy and the fight for your life and the torture, and your family was more involved because you had access to the phone and things of that nature, then it began to shed that attorney Ed Garland was really behind this whole thing.
I thought he was a part of it. Once I got a chance to get to the media, get a chance to get to a telephone, remember, they didn't let me get to a telephone and talk to my family for 5 minutes. The best I could say, how y'all doing? Is the kids okay? That was it. So once I got a chance to see that Kathy Johnson was out, she was back on the medication, even though her condition has degraded terribly, which is going to be a problem, and that Lampkin and Merritt was back out, and I was the only one that they were still torturing. As long as I was safe with that, then I said, now it's time for us to put up our fight. Let's get rid of these lawyers, and let's get on the ball and bring the public's eye to this.
Right.
And that's what they're trying to block right now.
I'm glad you brought that up. This is a very important point. A lot, brothers, black people, people of melanites need to know this. When you carry their driver's license, when you carry their birth certificate, it is called a commercial contract. So they by default know that you went to the state of New York for what? A benefit. Yes, you got the right to travel, but you didn't operate on the right to travel. You went there because they told you you needed a driver's license. But if you study the law and you look under Modoc versus Pennsylvania, that's a Supreme Court case that says no state shall take a right, convert it into a privilege, because they tell you driving is what? Privilege. And create a license and charge fees. When you went down and filled out the driver's license, what happened? You signed on, you showed them your birth certificate, Social Security, and you signed your name on the white card or whatever color card it is. How many signatures were on the card? One. Whose was it? Yours. So guess what? That's called a unilateral contract. What does that mean? That means it's a fraudulent document. The state, through the attorneys, are using that to extort money from the people. You have a right to travel. Driving is a like I said, go back and get a Black's Law Dictionary and get into the legal terms. Driving means that you're a limousine driver, you're a chauffeur, you're a taxi cab driver, you're charging people money to ride in the vehicle. But if you say you have a right to travel, you're not charging anybody. You're trying to go to and from your daily routine, going to work or for pleasure. So you're not even supposed to you're not supposed to have a driver's license. Because if you're driving, then that means you're charging somebody. So the state is making money fraudulently. And in contract law, there has to be 2 signatures on every contract. Otherwise, the document is fraud ab initio. So by brothers as well as people having the driver's licenses, they said, let me see your license. They see that you went to them for a benefit. They know you're under their jurisdiction, so they can do anything they want to you because you went to them for the benefit. What you should do, or a suggestion would be, take the driver's license and return it to the state. And watch how quickly they're going to say, why are you returning it? You don't have any points on your record, everything's good. Because you realize the document is fraudulent. I have a right to travel as under the Constitution, which says you have a right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. But if you get the contract with the driver's license, you have left the constitutional law and went into corporate law. So by default, that puts you under the admiralty. So when you go into court trying to tell your honor, he don't have to hear nothing because he's the master of the vessel, which is the courtroom. And the attorneys are working with the judge to take your money, your property, and transfer it over to the state. That's what attorneys do. They don't, just like the attorneys they haven't taken an oath to uphold Malachi Z or L's rights. They haven't taken a right, they don't have an oath to uphold the rights of you, me, or any flesh and blood, because they belong to the bar, and the bar goes back again to England. President Clinton was educated at Oxford. Oxford is a prestigious university pertaining to what? Law. What was Clinton's profession? Law. What was Gore's profession? Law. What a lot of the senators and congressmen, what are they? Attorneys and lawyers. Benjamin Franklin was a traitor. He sold out the American people with the Declaration of Independence, and he signed it Esquire, which violated at the time the 13th Amendment where you could not have a foreign title of nobility, because therefore your allegiance to the US of A would be in question. Beat up and they're getting harassed. They are being looked upon as chattel property, or let me put it in street terms. You looked at as a hoe. You're looked at as a slave. That's why these cops can do anything and get away with it, because they're bonded by who? The city. The public, the prosecutor is going to come to the aid of who? The officer, because the officer acts as a representative or agent of who? The state. So when you go to court, who do they say? It's Joe Blow versus the people of, or the state of. Now, if you didn't wear your seatbelt, and they give you a ticket for not wearing a seatbelt, who did you hurt? They'll say you hurt the state, which is somewhat true, because you agreed to adhere to their contract. So if you violate your contract, that's why they can lock you up, because you agreed to be a slave. So how do you get out of being a slave? You give them back their stuff. The insurance is bogus. Insurance companies are in it. Their job, insurance companies, is to collect premiums, not to pay out claims. Look at what happened in New Orleans and what happened in Texas and Florida. The insurance companies are getting hit because they don't have the money, just like the banks don't have the money. If people went to the banks right now and everybody said they wanted their cash money, the banks would close up right now. They would say you cannot have your money, and really the money's not yours, because it belongs to who? The Federal Reserve, which is private.
It's to drive. It's a necessity.
That's what they tell you. They tell you the driver's license is a necessity.
Okay, if I pursue to drive without this driver's license,
yes,
and I'm apprehended,
yes,
for operating a vehicle, unlicensed vehicle,
yes,
what happens?
Well, first of all, you have to take your vehicle out of their jurisdiction. When you register the vehicle, when you buy a car, let's say you buy a car cash money, and you go down to the DMV, right? Because whoever was the owner will give you what? Title. Then you go down with the title to the DMV. Then they take the title and they turn around and give you a new title. But they don't give you what's called the CMO, which is the MCO, pardon me, Manufacturer Certificate of Origin. All the vehicles that are on the road, the state owns the CMOs. So they know what vehicles are out there and what's on the road. But when you buy the vehicle, what you should do is, by you getting the title, you're putting the vehicle under the jurisdiction. That's why they can pull the vehicle over, they can search the vehicle, they can tell you to get out the vehicle, because the first thing the officer asks you, can I see driver's license, insurance, and proof of registration? You register the vehicle, it goes under their jurisdiction. Driver's license is their jurisdiction. The insurance is a company that operates within their jurisdiction. So in order for you to drive, you'd have to go back and do what's called get a salvage title. Return the title back to them and tell them you want a salvage title, or tell them you're taking the car to another jurisdiction or to another country. And they'll give you a special form that you would fill out, relinquishing it from their jurisdiction. Because it's all corporations. They have jurisdiction over corporations. It's as simple as a piece of paper. They have control over a piece of paper. You're flesh and blood. You're three-dimensional. Piece of paper is like one-dimensional. But if you say that you are a piece of paper, what do they have then? Jurisdiction. Sir, please step out the car. Because when you step out the car, what do? You give up jurisdiction. Sir, I think you've been drinking. Would you like to, take a sobriety test? Brothers don't even ask these police officers, excuse me, do you have an oath to uphold my rights? Let me see your identity card.